Welcome to the CFL Outsider, a short series of totally impartial hot takes, odd takes, and generally unconventional opinions on the CFL and Canadian football, with your host and presenter, Old Man Shouting at Clouds.
Hey kids, welcome to another episode of the CFL Outsider, Week 6. Do elk get hairballs? I remain, as ever, your very tired but valiantly powering on through host and presenter, Old Man Shouting at Clouds. Tired? Yeah, about 4 hours sleep last night. I won't bore you with the details, but it's been a tough day. The voice is a little raspy. Don't know how that's going to turn out. I didn't like the audio quality I was getting off the lapel mics, so I've decided to try the AirPod Pros here and see if they give me a better quality. Let me know what you think, which you prefer. That all helps me out. So why the episode? Do elk get furball? Yeah, it's a riff on the fact that the elk are choking continuously and destroying their fans, which I don't quite. I feel for them. I do feel for them. And then I realized after I made up the title after the game on Sunday night, and then yesterday's big news came out, and Chris Jones is fired, hey! And there's much rejoicing across the CFL fan bases everywhere. So my question now is, if elk get fur balls, did they just cough up a big one yesterday and maybe won't be choking anymore? I hope so. I should say, by the way, if you follow the CFL on the subreddit on the CFL, I've already put some of these things out in a post this week. So some of it will be repetitive, but I hope you'll stay and listen anyway. And if you're not on the subreddit for the CFL and you're a CFL fan watching this, you should be. I didn't realize. I freely admit I had no idea how good a community it is over there. They are a great group. I've been doing it for the last week or two. You can look me up on there if you want and follow my stuff there. It's just gives me a chance to put more of my weird little thoughts up online whenever I want rather than weekly. So that's that. I did have a bad fantasy week. We'll get to the main reason for that in a bit. But yeah, I reverted to the norm. 74.4. Oh, knocked me down a bit in all the leagues I'm in. And anyway, Pick'em wasn't a lot better. 2-2. It leaves me at 18-6, so 75%. But hey, and again, if you want to see how I do the Pick'em, I do a quick little Old Man Plays CFL Pick'em in under a minute. You can check that out on podcast or YouTube, and then a slightly longer Old Man Plays CFL Fantasy, where I just talk about what my picks are and why I'm making them. If that helps you at all, then feel free to steal from me, but use them at your peril. Let's see. Do I have a rant this week? Yeah, I do. And I've probably been on it before. So here's this week's rant. Roughing the passer calls on sliding quarterbacks. Last week, we had, not this previous weekend, but the week before, we had two very bad calls in the Ottawa game. Not bad official calls, very good calls by official, bad hits on the quarterback. Those players were fined the maximum amount. And that's a good thing. I like that. Later in that same week, we saw a couple other players. I remember Dozier from Calgary, at least one of them, who made a point of not hitting the quarterback. Very happy about that, too. This week, we had the Saskatchewan BC game. At one point, VA slid. Deontay Williams from the Riders came in. He was trying to make the hit. Tried to let up. Tried to stop. Slowed up as much as he can. Ended up putting his hand on VA's chest from what I saw with his momentum. And got flagged for roughing the passer. Well, I think that's bad call for the league. Because if we go back to the intent of the rule, it's to protect quarterbacks. If we're going to flag them anytime they're touched, then the DBs or the defenders may as well say, well, I might as well hit them if I'm getting the flag. So if you feel you have to flag that kind of contact where it's just you're trying to stop but it's still there, then how about we make it a smaller penalty? 5 yards rather than 15. We've got, with pass interference, we've got the full-on one where you get the ball at the spot of the foul or accidental for 10 yards. Let's do that, an accidental roughing. I think that rewards the players that are trying not to hit them and still lets us really lower the boom on those that are still delivering blows with force. That's about it. That's the rant. So let's see, what else do we have now? Let's just jump on to game one. This is Toronto 37 at Montreal 18. Show me the way to go home. I'm tired and I want to go to bed. Had a little drink about an hour ago and it went right to my head. Montreal did look tired. You could tell they were coming off a short week at the end of a long stretch of heavy games and going into the bye. I think that was the big difference in this game. They were just wrung out, and Toronto was pissed off about the last couple of games they'd lost and had a point to prove, and it showed up. And then, especially when Cody went out. If Cody'd been in all game, it might have been a different game. But he wasn't. He went out early in the first half. And, I mentioned the fantasy thing. I've discovered that when your fantasy pick for quarterback and captain goes out early in the first half and you end up with 5 points out of the position with the doubling, your week is pretty much buggered. Say 74.4 points. Yeah. But then, hey, Cody went out and they brought in the backup, and Caleb Evans is a fully competent backup in Montreal, and he threw the first 2 touchdown passes of the game. One to his team and one to Toronto, unfortunately. But, hey, they ended in the end zone. Got to make somebody happy. Let's see, what else did I get from that? Not a whole lot other than this. To every other team in the league, do not let the Argos set up Janarian Grant up the middle. 2 weeks in a row, he did basically the same return. I mean, one was on a punt, one was on a kickoff, but it was that middle return. They just opened a hole, and he's through and flying. Special team coordinators got to pay attention. Okay, I think it might be a shorter one this week. I didn't have quite as much to talk about with all this stuff, but we'll go through it anyways, because we're already on to game 2. Calgary 37 at Winnipeg 41. I went to a wrestling match, and an air show broke out. I thought this was going to be a ground and pound all over the place between the two teams, and we ended up, I forget what we ended up with yards. One receiver, Ontario, I think it's pronounced, Wilson, with like over 200 yards. One of like the bunch of receivers that went off this weekend. But that was a exciting, dynamic kind of game. I noticed in the pregame show, Coach Barker was ragging on Trey Robinson of the the Calgary Stampeders. He made him sound like the new Nick Marshall. Apparently he's jumping routes and letting things behind him and all. I watched him in the game. He didn't look too bad, and he got 2 picks. But I'll keep watching. Coach usually knows what he's talking about when it comes to player personnel. I will mention that that you're going into a game between a couple of struggling teams when TSN plays the same 1 or 2 previous game highlights over and over and over. They just can't find anything else to look good on it. But the game itself turned out really well, and there were mistakes. I say again to defensive linemen out there everywhere, if you go offside, keep going. Make them blow it dead. Otherwise, you try and hop back, you're giving them a free play, and, if you're lucky, the only thing that happens is maybe like a 12-yard pass to Barnes across the middle and a first down. It could be a lot worse. Don't just give them the free plays. I do have to say, it looks to me like Brandon Alexander on the back end. There's a safety for the Bombers. I don't know if he's struggling through something or if it's just age is getting there on him, but it looks to me like he's lost a step this season. I don't see the same rush to the ball that I've seen in the past. I think I should also mention, hopefully you all saw the game, or this stuff I talk about doesn't make any sense at all, but at least in the highlights, there was the play where there was a pass to Nick Dembski, 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. He caught it. The official closest to him marked it or signaled as a catch. He took off upfield, and an official from much further away whistled it down and said, no, it was incomplete. The replay showed it was pretty obviously complete. And Coach O'Shea threw the challenge flag. And he said afterwards he knew that it was going to hurt him, that he couldn't help it. He was angry and just had to prove the point. So yeah, they threw the challenge flag. Turns out it was a great catch. But he ended up with a -2 yard gain, so they were 2nd and 12 instead of 2nd and 10 or 1st and 10 or something like that. And I think that's just absolutely ridiculous, because the problem wasn't in the play. The problem was with the ref. It was an inadvertent whistle. So that play after you won the challenge, at the very least, I think it should have been that. An inadvertent whistle down over 1st and 10, where it started from. That's my thoughts on it. Makes sense. I don't know we'll ever see the situation again, but it is just bizarre. I love the fact that the Dream Team was in the booth for TSN tonight. Or that night, sorry. That was on Friday night, that was, yeah. Dustin Nielsen and Matt Dunnigan. I tell you, Dustin Nielsen he is so far head and shoulders above the other commentators on TSN. I love the excitement he brings to the game, just the intensity, and he gets into it. Not cheering for one team, but just to the excitement of the game. He's brilliant. And Matty Dunnigan, I mean, he seems like people either love him or hate him. I personally, I'm on the love him side. I love what he's got to say. I'm influenced by what I saw of him as a player. I mean, anyone lucky enough to have been around and saw Matt Dunnigan play and how tough he was and the things he accomplished, amazing. So that he gets a lot of leeway in my part, but I don't think he needs it. I mean, his charm is you never know what he's going to say, and yeah, some of it seems a little bit off there, but that's kind of like Madden. He used to be like that too. So keep him coming, Matty. And again, Dustin's out of the West, so there's very few chances for you two to work together, but I would love to see a lot more of it from TSN. What else? Oh, there was a play which seemed very bizarre. Kind of a bad snap for the Stamps, and then Mayer kind of mishandled it and tried to give it to Mills, and it ended up on the ground. And then somehow Mills scooped it up and cut through the line and got a 55-yard run, which is pretty good on a broken play. But I can see it happening, because when the ball goes on the ground, I think even with professionals, the ball's on the ground, it's my ball, I get big, and everybody goes for it and forgets about anything else. So they're going after the ball, he manages to scoop it and gets the run. I used to coach against a team. I can't guarantee they coached their punt returners to do this, but they always had somebody with speed, and I swear, it didn't matter who was in there, if you punted it and the returner caught it with like 10, 15 yards to spare, I dropped it, and just let it drop on the ground at his feet. Everybody in the coverage team would forget all about their lanes and just come rushing in to get it, and then in the last minute he'd scoop it up and go around them, and with his speed he'd score or get a big gain. It took a lot of coaching our special teams, our coverage teams, to not have them fall for that. So when you're not expecting it in a game, yeah, I can see how that happens. And I do have to say too, my last sort of comment on this game is just, there was a sack at the end of the game, pretty much wrapped it up for the Bombers, and it was just so appropriate that it was Jake Thomas, who's in his 13th, 14th year in the middle of that line there, been beaten back offensive lines for years and doing a great job. But nice to see him get that sack. That brings us to game 3. The Riders 20 at the Lions 35. To paraphrase Ron Lancaster's famous BC post-game speech, let's hurry up and get showered before McInnis catches another one. Amazing. Just amazing. Everybody's talking about how amazing VA was, talking about how fantastic McInnis was with his, 14 for 14 catches and 200 some yards and a touchdown and all that. And they're talking about the call that the Riders that Coach Mace made to go for the onside kick halfway through the fourth quarter, and what cojones it takes to do that. And I agree with all that, but I'm not going to waste time on it because everybody's talking about it. So what have I got to talk about? Well, I loved the first sack in the game by the Riders. Anthony Lanier II, he came in, good solid hit right into VA's chest, and then as he was taking him to the ground, twisted to the side so his weight didn't land on the quarterback. Textbook sack, textbook tackle, perfect. That's how you play the game with intensity and still keep our quarterback safe and on the field. Great job, Anthony. Another great job, there was early on in the game, the Riders managed to break Sam Emilus again around the left. This time it was around the left side, got him around the corner, didn't get to the end zone, but I think it was like 50 yards or something. He got there because Ajo put just an absolutely amazing seal block on the DB on that corner. I say again, don't sleep on Ajo. He's not going to be around here that long. He's going to be down south. They did also do a in-game interview with Nathan Rourke. Now let me tell you, that was a lot of fun. It was great to hear what he had to say about, his chances. He still figures he's got a good shot in the NFL. He kind of suggested that if he was going to come back to the CFL, it would probably be to the Lions, which was a little bit surprising. But the thing is, while he was telling us all that, on the field, we had the Lions kicking a field goal, and then the Riders got the ball, but they got it at the midfield, not the 40, because there was some kind of a misconduct penalty that was never replayed and never explained to us. All that we knew was, at some point I think Suits said, there was a penalty on the field goal, so Riders are at midfield. I'd like to know what's going on. TSN, please stop with the gall darn in-game interviews, sideline interviews, booth interviews. I don't care. Put them at halftime. We all hate it, mixing up the game, and we don't mind giving up the time with the panel at halftime. Just move it, please. Okay. And I guess my last thought on this one is a lot of people will say that this was a blowout by the BC Lions. 35-20, a 15-point win. Blowout win. BC is the best team in the West. Absolutely. Well, I think the only thing you need to know on that point is BC put in a rising star, Justin McInnis, hobbled, risking a chance of injuring him back in the fourth quarter to make sure they held on to that game. So I don't know about it being that big of a blowout. Let's see, what else have we got? Game 4, Ottawa 37 at Edmonton 34. So you're saying there's a chance. I don't know. I wanted to come up with a title for this part about something about the choking elk again, but it's just, I don't know, it's almost like beating a dead horse. Hopefully with Jones gone, they will improve. But for this game, a few different things that I noticed, and I think this is the first one. I think if you ask an Edmonton fan or a Hamilton fan, actually, it works for both of them, everybody is talking about just how bad we feel for them, how terrible it is to have your team performing like that, how rough and how often it is to feel like that. And that is all true. But I can guarantee you that's probably annoying them more than anything, because they don't want to be pitied. They want to be feared. They want their team back up and doing what they've historically done and winning games. So, yeah, I hope so, Elk. I hope very soon everybody's back. I hope for the Elk fan, I hope everybody in the league is soon back to hating you and wanting you to do poorly. I'm beating a dead horse on this, but I gotta say it again too. I just can't help myself. The PI, it's been so inconsistent, the calls, and even within like one game, two calls that can be completely different, and yet they are absolutely the same and they're ruled different, or they're completely different and they're ruled the same. And even when the command center, the eye in the sky, is involved, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I felt bad because Bob Dice had a few times when he had a chance to challenge and didn't. And in the end, when he challenged, it was a great decision. But how do you, as a coach, challenge a play when you have no idea if they're going to interpret the call by the rules or just make it up the way they seem to? If there's one thing I think the league in officiating needs to get consistent on, it's that. Let's see. Oh, hey, Pimpleton. Man, that that man can run. That 75-yard or 70-yard or whatever TD where he took the crosser and then just outran the angles. Wow. And if you want to know why Dustin Nielsen is the best call in the business, just listen to his call on that play. That was, yeah, I love that stuff. But on the other hand, I also thought his name to me doesn't sound like a player. It sounds like it's sort of a southern U.S. small college or something, John Doe, a defensive tackle out of Pimpleton, had so many tackles over. I don't know. My brain works that way. Enjoy it or not. I mentioned when when Bob Dice did make the challenge on the interference call in the end zone, and I've heard a lot of people question that. They had the ball on the 4-yard line. It was, I think, going to be second down, so they had another crack at it. A challenge to gain 4 yards or 3 yards or whatever. Maybe they had it on 5. I don't remember. Does that make sense? Of course it makes sense, because those yards inside the 5 are the toughest yards in football. If you can cut it down from 4 or 5 to 1, you do it. And look, it paid off in the end zone. There was at one point in the game, and Edmonton, I didn't get the number, but an Edmonton defensive lineman who went offside, and it didn't get called. But he was like offside by a half a yard at least. I was so shocked there was no call that I went back and slow motioned it on TSN and looked. I thought maybe the center snapped the ball early on the count and nobody else on the O-line moved. But no, he was almost across to the center by the time the ball moved at all, and it got missed, which is fine. Officials miss that. But I found it interesting that it didn't get mentioned in by the color commentator, by Glenn Suter, and then all of a sudden, like 4 or 5 plays later in the drive, there's a 3rd and 1, and Edmonton gets called for offside on the D line, and they show a graphic down the line, and it's sort of the ball's in between the yard markers, and they're in between the yard markers, so it looks like they're pretty safe, but you don't know. And he starts throwing shade at the officials, going, "Oh, well, they must have laser vision to see someone offside there." If you're going to call them out when they make a big mistake, not something like that. Big mistake is half-yard offside, a guy that's 300 pounds blocking your vision because you've got the lineman working from either side. Anyway, I kind of felt like Sunday night on the panel, they've only been having the 2 guests there. When they've had like Milt and Enoch together, it's been great. They've had some other good combinations. This week, I felt like Davis Sanchez just mailed it in. It looked like it's Sunday night, I don't want to be here. So do better, Davis. If you're there, do a good job. What else do we have? Oh, speaking of suits, Glenn Suter, has he become Eugene Lewis's new PR man? It sounded an awful lot like that during the game. And I also saw in this game and this game in the Hamilton one last week, people say, well, you're at the end of the half, you're almost, at midfield, why don't you at least try a Hail Mary? Maybe something good happens. You get pass interference and you have time to kick a field goal, or maybe somehow you get in the end zone. Why don't you do that? Because strip sack, that's why. You try that, and all of a sudden, maybe you find that instead of you having a chance, the other team has the ball in your end of the field and can try a long field goal. No, I like the safe route. Just, you're down there under 15 seconds or so, you take a knee. It did look to me like Dominic Ryans did have a whale of a game in the end, but it seemed like the first 3 or 4 catches, he made the catches, they were solid, they got the yardage, but he was fighting it. It was just like, it looked awkward in his hands. And then he got that big hit on the sideline that left him maybe knocked out or something. I don't know. Whatever it wasn't a concussion, I'm sure, because he's back in the game. And I mean, the protocols are solid enough. I do believe in them. But whatever it was, it seemed to just make something click in him, because he was smooth as butter from then on. Just everything right in his hands. Beautiful catches, even the hard ones. Good, solid hands, not a wobble. I gotta like it. What else do I have? Felt like the refs were kind of quick on the whistles in this game. There were at least 2 where there was a possible catch and a hit, and then either a knocked loose, so it's an incomplete pass, or a fumble. They were both blown dead right away, incomplete pass. Okay, you're going to make the call, I get it, but why then in other games do we see officials in that situation not whistling it dead, letting it play out so they can go to the eye in the sky and find out, was there actual, did the receiver have possession of the ball? Was there actually a catch? Because both of them looked like you could make an argument for that. And when you blow it dead right away, you take away any chance of that being confirmed. It doesn't do you any good. Whereas if you let it play out, then you can check if you're right or wrong. So why? Why does one set of officials do it one way and the others another set the different way? Again, consistency. I know you've got different people who are making calls in very split-second decisions and stuff, but you're trained to be professional referees, professional officials. Get consistent. Let the league tell them how they want it called and stick with it. And then I guess the last thing I have to say on this game is just a great big thank you to Justin Hardy for some pretty good catches and then fighting to get into the end zone there on that last touchdown. If you saw that, that was something else. I'm not fully convinced he was in the end zone, but there was no angle that could confirm it, and they called it a touchdown. And I'm happy, because at least, Justin, you were the one bright spot on my pathetic fantasy team this week. Of my 70, what was it, 70-some points? Where did I have that? 74.4 points. You accounted for 22.7 of them on your own, so thank you very much, sir. And I guess that's about all that I've got on the games. Let's see. Maybe just some final thoughts to, well, how many do I have? A bunch. Let's be less specific and say a bunch of final thoughts for you here. First off, to the Blue Bomber fans, I know you're really feeling great about stuff. You've had a couple of wins, and that's good, but don't be jumping the gun too quickly here. 2 so-so wins does not mean they're back to what they have been in the past. They may be. They're looking better. They're getting the running game going. They're getting Brady going. Zach actually had a couple of touchdown passes. But let's not rush to judgment. Let's hold off, say, 4 weeks when they've gone through the Saskatchewan, Toronto, BC. Once they've gone through that gauntlet, let's see where they are, and we'll see if they're back or not. What else did I have here? Oh, yes. Something that came out. This was more last week than this week, but I didn't really talk about it. Caught a lot of people by surprise when, with the Argos, Coach Dinwiddie was asked about Chad Kelly, and after going into training camp saying we're not going to talk about people that aren't on the field and on the team right now, suddenly he's all talkative about Kelly, and he's praising him and saying, oh yeah, when the league gets him back in, lets him back in, he'll be, when he gets reinstated, he'll be our number one guy for sure. He's the best quarterback in decades in the CFL. And I thought, is that really smart when you're still counting on Cameron Dukes to at least, play another 4 games for you and hopefully win them, and then to tell him flat out that he's got no chance, no matter how well he plays, of getting the job? I don't understand it. The only thing that makes sense is this is a big assumption, but, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, I think personally Kelly has been a pampered athlete with a big ego. The fact that he got into this situation where he was interested in a woman and who wasn't interested in him and he couldn't take no, that's a sign of someone who's been pampered, who's been told you can have whatever you want. You're a star athlete. You've got the Kelly name and all that. And I think his ego is just a little frail on that, and he's struggling. I mean, I don't do the Twitter X or X Twitter or whatever they call the stuff now, but I'm told that he's on there putting out some pretty questionable things during games and stuff like that, and maybe unraveling a bit. So this could be Dinwiddie trying to, stoke up that ego, pump him up again. No, you're really great. You're really great. Don't worry about what anyone else says. Don't fly off. Don't lose it all and get yourself gone for the season, because that's maybe a possibility if he's, depending on how he does with the league stuff, and if he keeps doing some of this strange weirdness, I don't know. So we'll see. It's an interesting topic anyway. I also wondered, when I get the game on TSN and I get it recorded, I get a little flash card up there saying, BC at whatever, and then the pregame, if I record it, it's behind that, and Rod Smith is still the face on the pregame show. He hasn't been the face of the pregame show for 2 or 3 years. And frankly, Kate's a little better looking, so we want Kate TSN. Update that. What else do I have? Oh, something I've always really wondered about is why is it that if an offense is deep in their own end zone, trying to march out, that it's critical they get the first 2 or 3 first downs. Maybe someday Glenn Suter can explain that to me. I also think that, last thought sort of in general, I feel like watching the Elk lately has been like kind of like watching a drunk who's trying to get his key in the door. And he's trying so hard, and he's circling in it there and there, and you want him to do it because he's trying so hard, and so there, and he's coming in. Oh, and it's close, and hold your breath. He's got it. Yes, maybe. Nope, not again. I don't know how many ways you can find to lose game. Sorry, Elk fan, but you're saying it too. So that's about it. If you've enjoyed this, subscribe to get some more. Share it with friends, definitely. The almighty algorithm and I both like comments if you can leave any. The algorithm sees that as engagement and then puts my show out to more people, and that helps me. So I'd love you helping me with that. And I love them because I'm hoping to get some constructive criticism. I am doing this in a vacuum, and I want to get better at it. Hard to do without feedback. So please leave some comments down here, or I'm not on the social medias, so you can email me at oldman, one word, shoutingatclouds@shaw.ca. Let me know what you think, what you loved, what you hated, anything like that. I can't see my own blind spots, so if you don't help me out, well, we're never going to get any better. And I want to. I think that's about it. Until next week, get the hell off my lawn.